afternoon and evening wherever you are in the world, and thank you again for tuning in to ALCHEMOTO's Garage Series vlogs. So, for this vlog, what we're going to do is what we mentioned before on a few previous ones about bleeding the brakes on your Harley Davidson Sportster. Again, this covers all the range with ABS. Now, the same procedure will count for non-ABS, but we're going to go into the details of what that actually means. But before we do, let's hit that intro. Okay, so as we're drawing into the autumn or the fall months now around the world, things are cooling down and riding season for some, not for all, is coming to a close. I for one will be trying to ride throughout the winter on the dry days if possible, but it's time to do a little bit of service work on the bike before that time comes. Now, the trees are already turning outside. I've got the 10k service coming up on the bike and on a few others to do in the ALCHEMOTO workshop. But we're going to concentrate on mine for now and get this brake fluid changed, as this brake fluid's been in now for 3 years and the recommended service schedule for brake fluid is 2 years. So this is going to be interesting to see what colour that fluid is after 3 years of use. I know some of you might be on bikes which are 6-7 years old and never had that system flushed. So now we're going to show you. But first thing we're going to do is show you what tools we're going to need to do the job. Okay, let's have a further look. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the fluid itself. So we're using a DOT4 fluid, brake and clutch fluid, synthetic. Okay, I always buy a bigger one of these and it's handy if you're doing more. It's actually cheaper to buy the bigger canister than it is just to buy the small ones, and you've always got it then in stock. Now we're going to start off just with a clear bottle. We will show you what that is for in a minute. You need an 8mm ring spanner, and that's for the bleed nipple on the bike. We need one Phillips screwdriver, and this is the all important bit, is an auto bleeder. Now it's the simplest one that you can buy, and for me it's actually the best one that you can buy. The reason being is if you use an easy bleeder and an air bleeder, you use maybe a spare tyre or something like that which has a connector onto it and then goes into your master cylinder and purges the air through the system, purges the fluid through the system. But the problem with that is, as you purge the fluid through, it's pushing it through with air. Now, it does the job okay, but with an ABS line, if you get any minute bubble of air in that system, it's going to throw up an ABS fault. Okay, so this one, all you do is, it's a one-way valve, and if we look closely, there's an arrow on there. So of course that one will go onto the bleed nipple on the bike. We will show you how to use that very shortly. Okay, and the reason we use the bottle is we're going to put that tube in with a little bit of brake fluid in the bottle. Okay, so even though it's a one-way valve, when that valve closes off, even for a minute second, there is no way any air will get sucked up because that tube is going to be in fluid inside the bottle. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with that, and that is all the tools you're going to need to do this job. But for now, we'll explain in a little bit more detail. Okay, so if you imagine this is the brake system now. We have, okay, one brake lever, one master cylinder with the fluid, and to your block, and down to your front wheel and your caliper. Okay, it's as simple as that. And your rear one, you will have your rear brake pedal, your actuator rod, and of course then that goes into your rear reservoir, and then basically then to your rear wheel and rear caliper. In the middle of this one though and this one will join up. There'll be a line off from here and a line off from here, which will meet to the ABS block, which is just behind the rear of the frame on the Sportster models. But basically, and some people quote that they prefer to purge the fluid up this way and purge the air up through the top of the master cylinder. In doing so, I don't agree with this method, because gravity, obviously what goes up, everything has to come down. As long as you keep this master cylinder full of fluid and don't let that empty anywhere up to this point here, you are not going to get any air in the system. Therefore, as this bleed line comes through from here and purges through to the ABS valve, as long as you've got fluid in there, you will not get any air through. So the secret of bleeding brakes, okay, and what you'll do is you'll have this then to the bleeder and then to the bottle. Keeping in mind gravity. Your lever is your actuator for the bleeding method. Keep some fluid in here and the one-way valve in here. Most people use the extra helper or the friend to help to bleed the brakes, which is one of them is spannering on here, which is opening the valve, pulling the lever, closing the valve, opening the lever, and just keep doing that and purging the system through. With this valve, it's doing away with your friend, so you don't have to buy extra beers. You leave this valve open and you're purging by the lever. Okay, all you're doing is purging that lever and purging that fluid down. When this reservoir gets underneath where the piston actuates, it will not have any pressure. You have to keep this reservoir at least a halfway point on here. Okay, you will see the colour change in the bottle from when your new fluid is coming through, so you know that you've purged the system, and that's what we're going to do. So the first thing you need to do is to make sure your master cylinder is level. Now on the kickstand, your bike, even though it's leaning, this always stays level. You can just about see the level through there, which is halfway on the glass. And then we need to remove the top. This is where your Phillips screwdriver comes in hand. Just make sure you don't lose your screws. Okay. Now that doesn't look too bad at all. Okay, so you can see the bleed nipple, we've got the bleeder. Pop that onto there, like so. Tube. Make sure that's in the bottom of there, like that. Take your 8mm spanner and then just crack off that bleed nipple. You can use a bigger bottle, obviously. That is just to show you guys the method in it. Normally I'd have a milk bottle or something like that, or a clean shampoo bottle you've cleaned out. Okay, so basically then all we're going to do is purge, and then you can see what's happening down here now with the one-way valve. All the time you need to be watching, and you can look at the bottom of the master cylinder, you'll see the two holes. You don't want that level to drop below there. Okay. And you can see every purge I do with the brake lever, that bottle's filling up. And we're getting a bit full there now. Okay, so if we just stop that process for 1 minute, now the bottle's getting full. Now remember, just make sure that doesn't come off the blue nipple. Always get a rag. Then I get a few drips in. Now of course, if you're using a bigger bottle, you'll never have to do this. Again, this is just for illustration purposes. Now, you can see how the one-way valve is working. There's still fluid in the bottom of that line. The valve is holding well because we had one drip from there, just from the bottle. There is nothing dripping out of that line, so you know that valve is absolutely spot on. So there's no way air is going to come up. You can see these bubbles here now, just put it down on the ground. That's what you don't want, but it won't go past there. Now what I said earlier about how my fluid didn't look that dirty, and we fill this bottle up, and this is the reason I've used this bottle for illustration purposes only. We fill that bottle up a quarter with new fluid. And what we've done is now we've put the old fluid through, and you can see the clear fluid has gone to the top of the bottle. And look at the difference. So even though my fluid, 2 years old, it did look clean, and that shows you how contaminated that is. Okay, so there's the new fluid now which has come up from there, and the old fluid has settled at the bottom. So it just goes to show you that even though your fluid does look clean, that's how contaminated it actually is. So when you're using this method, you'll bleed your system through until you have none of that contaminant left. And then you know that if you've only got clear left in the bottle after 2 or 3 purges of the master cylinder, your brake fluid is clean, and you'll do the same on the rear. So I can empty that in there. Now there's no need now to fill any new fluid in there. You'll be able to see how contaminated the rest of it is, so we'll purge that through. But of course, always remember to top up. Okay, so that is the second purge of the master cylinder, and you can see we still have A bit of cloudiness in there. Actually looks like a bad pint of bitter. So we'll go ahead and we'll purge that through a third time and see the difference. Okay, so we've had 3 full purges of the system now. And if you look at the fluid difference this time, that looks absolutely crystal clear, so that now is like a decent pint of lager. So the only thing we need to do now is close off the valve. Take off the tube. And then you need to purge the brake lever now, almost as if you're going to activate the ABS. So you want to pull that quite hard a few times and then see whether the pressure holds. But first we'll pop the master cylinder cap back on. Any excess off there we'll just wipe off, like so. Pop on your cap. Always tighten these down evenly as well. Just nip that until you just feel it to get it getting a grip. And the opposite side. Just make sure it seats down nice and even. Okay, that's all you need. Wipe the excess. And then pump the brake. Okay, so there's no sponginess at all there, it's a nice solid feel. Okay folks, so that is how easy it is to bleed the system. Now the rear is exactly the same, so we're going to do the rear now, just to show you the same process on that. Okay folks, so yeah, the ABS valve, which is fitted to the rear of your bike, just in front of the rear tyre, underneath the frame. Now what the ABS module does, now if I'm teaching you to suck eggs you can skip this bit, but all it is, it pulses. So if you're under heavy braking, now in a car you've got 4 wheels and the ABS module works in a completely different way with opposite wheels. With this, it's only if you're using the front brake or the rear brake, so it's only working on one to stop one wheel from locking, not both, not 4 like on a car system. So whichever brake you're activating under hard braking, that module is telling you it's either on the rear brake or the front brake. Okay, so for the ECU to recognise whether an ABS event is going to occur, and that is whether it recognises one wheel is moving faster than the other at any given time. So what that'll mean is if your rear wheel starts to slip maybe and your front wheel's still got traction, and the ABS and the ECU will recognise that you've got a problem and then will kick in. So that ABS module, I think it recognises up to 7 pulses a second or something like that, and you'll feel those pulses through either the front brake lever or on the foot pedal, brake pedal for the rear at any given time. So only probably one or the other. Don't think, quote me if I'm wrong, I don't think it does both at the same time. It's either one or the other. So it recognises the back wheel's slipping before the front, it will do the back wheel or the front and vice versa. Okay, so that's why the ECU is important. Now, people say you should use the plug-in tools for the ABS module for bleeding the brakes. And the reason being that is all that does is it opens up the valves inside the ECU. It opens up the valves inside the ABS module and purges the remaining fluid out from there. Now that fluid is only a minute bit anyway, so unless your fluid is absolutely black like Satan, there's no reason to do that, but there is a little way you can do. As we've just done the front and as we're going to do the rear, exactly the same process. You can take that bike out on the road and put your bike into an ABS situation where if you bring the ABS light on, you know it's actually opening them valves and pulsing the system. Therefore, if you've bled through the front and the rear with fresh oil and you purge that system, make it do it on one wheel, and then you only have to do one side, preferably from the rear. If you can lock that rear and bring the ABS light on, you know you've purged that bit of oil through. All you've got to do then is come back to your garage, bleed another bottle through on that rear circuit, and you know you've got that out. It's as simple as that, because your fresh oil then would have passed through the ABS lines, and then you can purge them out in a normal bleeding fashion. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do the rear. Okay, so we're in the same situation again, but this time we're on the rear. So we need to take the cover off the rear master cylinder, and then we'll go over to the other side of the bike and show you what we've done there. Okay, so we remove the two screws as we did with the front master cylinder. And again, be careful not to lose your screws. My back lighting is just showing how filthy my bike is from last week's ride. You can. I need to take the rubber up with it. There we go. You can tell that's not been off for a while. Probably from new. Okay. And you're going to get some spillage, so remember your rag for underneath on your shop floor. We've got the tube again onto here and the obligatory bottle down here. So again, we just undo the valve and be careful not to throw the tube off in the process, because I've got no fluid in that. You're better off with a heavier bottle, by the way. Again, that's only for illustration. But this time, folks, we need to do the brake pedal for the rear. So all we're doing now is purging that brake, and you will see the fluid in the reservoir start to go down, and the bottle should be filling on the other side. Okay, so you can see that fluid now has gone down in there, and the bottle is filling up there. Just as a matter of note as well, there's not as much fluid in the rear part of the system. The cable's not as long on the rear as it is for the front, so it's not as far to the caliper, so you've not as much fluid in there, so just be careful. You only probably need about 6-7 pumps before having to fill up the fluid reservoir again. Now, what I noticed as well, when I was pumping that and I had my head over the side of the bike just watching the fluid coming through, I actually noticed 3 or 4 bubbles of air come through that system, and that has never been off from factory. ABS light has never been a problem, but yeah, I had 3 or 4 bubbles in there, so that was quite interesting. So we'll purge that through now and then go ahead and see what the fluid colour looks like. Okay folks, so we've filled up the bottle. Now that's 4 times I filled up the master cylinder, and again probably 10-12 pumps every time before you need to fill it. So all we're going to do now is lock off the valve. You see, that isn't too bad, and we've not emptied that bottle out as we did with the front one, so it just shows you that I'm, you know, a front brake user more than the rear. So I'm quite happy that I don't need to do any more on that rear circuit. Okay, so always remember to put the rubber caps back on. Quick wipe off. Test that. Beautiful pressure. Okay folks, so that is all it is. It's so simple. As long as you don't get any air and you don't allow that reservoir to empty out the fluid, it's a simple process that you can do at home. Only thing I will say is, if you do get air in that system, before you make sure you get every bit out before you switch the ignition on, because there is a chance that you could get a fault code up, and that's what we don't want to do. So what we're going to do now is just put the bike on and start her up. Absolutely perfect. Okay folks, so I hope you learned something from that, and it is something you can do at home as long as you follow that process and do not get any air into the ABS module itself. You shouldn't have any problems. I'm quite satisfied that 99.9% of that fluid is clear, so that's good enough for me. Okay, so just on a side note, like I said, I've been a engineer for over 30 years now. I know I don't look it. So I've worked with heavy diesel, petrol engines, quarry equipment, machinery, plant, cars, classic cars and the likes, and bikes. So even though this is an everyday thing for me, whether it's hydraulics, electrics, pneumatics, engine building, what have you, I'm just telling you from my experience that it is something you can learn and do yourself if you're a confident person with the spanners. If not, obviously leave it to the people that know. But certainly it's maybe a 45-minute job over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or even a beer if that's what you want, and the job's done and you're ready to ride. Okay, so thanks for watching ALCHEMOTO. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, hit that like button, and look forward to a load of stuff coming on the channel for over the winter months to keep you guys entertained. I'll see you soon.